I know, guys. Don't adjust your screens. We're finally back. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. I know, isn't it crazy? It's late February. We always talk about this being our favorite time of the year. We're heading into March. We got March Madness right around the corner. We're gonna get into all our college basketball stuff soon. We got baseball finally back. I know we talked about maybe sprinkling a Nerfy in that Dodgers Padres game. I'm sorry if you did, but obviously now that MLB spring training finally getting underway. Now we're gonna be bringing out maybe some MLB futures. As we get closer and closer to the start of another fun MLB season. But we're just going to do a quick recap of how we did yesterday. Obviously, we just had a couple picks from our picks yesterday. I'll take it. I'll take how I did yesterday. First, FAU minus 5.5, minus 6.5, minus 7.5 didn't matter. They won by 10. This was a great bounce back spot for them, in my opinion, at home. Look, I do respect SMU. They're a great basketball team, but I feel like FAU, after just all the disrespect they kind of had this season, especially after that road loss at USF, and pretty much was one of the best games for USF all season. It was definitely a great bounce back spot, and I definitely love them. So that was a great win. But then Stanford, obviously, that was a tough loss. I was loving Stanford at home. I thought their offense was going to show up, and Oregon has been a little bit shaky on the road this year, but finally, Dana Allman and that Oregon squad finally got a road win. So that was great to see for them. But, tough loss one-on-one day for me. And then for you, Ari, just simple day for you. All you had was the Mavs and the Clippers on the money line, and, doing a quick recap of how they did yesterday, going first to the Clippers. It was just a tough day. They couldn't shoot the ball. When you have SGA, Lou Dort, Jay Will having a good day, it's kind of tough, kind of tough there. And then, so you're not really beating yourself too much of it. And obviously, this was the first game for a lot of people, obviously everyone after the All-Star break. So we're not beating ourselves too much over it. And then obviously did get to see a winner, the Mavs getting the home win against the Phoenix Suns. They always own the Suns honestly. And of course, a classic Luka day, 41, 9, and 11. Classic day for him. Just another day of filling up the stat sheet and getting another win at home against their Suns in Phoenix. But now we're going to get into our picks for today. We have a couple picks for today. This is for me. I'm sticking here just in the Ivy League, going back to the college basketball, the hardwood, and I'm taking Cornell money line at home minus 135. And you're probably asking yourself, why is Cornell, who is a lot better than their record than their opponent, I should say, is only getting minus 135 at home? I'll tell you why. Because Yale's defense is good. But you know what? Cornell's offense is at home. The better offense at home. This is the system play, people. We always talk about taking the better offenses at home. This familiar nets, this is honestly pretty much for right now. I'd say for first place in the Ivy League right now between these two programs. Cornell, they're kind of having a surprise year. No one really talked about them, and this is for first place. They're right now currently tied. Yale got the 2-point win last time they played, and that was at Yale. So now this is at Cornell at home in Ithaca, New York, and I feel like I'm just taking the better offense at home here. Cornell, they shoot the ball really well. They shoot about 50% from the field, which is one of the best in the country. They pass the ball really well. And, even with, Yale's defensive prowess, I don't think their offense is going to do just enough to contain, this Cornell offense that averages about 84 points a game. And, this is one of the best stories you never heard of, because you hear about what Princeton is doing with Xavier Lee and now how, they're shining over. But, these two schools as well in the Ivy League have definitely, been proven to have, just really, really be competitive this year. And there honestly is a rumor of a two-bid Ivy League. Could you see that? It would be scenes. But I just like Cornell here, taking a better team at home, minus 135. You're getting them for a good price. I saw that line. I think it was at minus 125 yesterday. So a lot of steam going in that direction for all you cappers out there. So I'm taking Cornell on the money line here at minus 135, and then going to the game I just talked about again, Princeton. I'm taking them first half minus 3.5 tonight, minus 120 on DraftKings right now. Look, this is a great spot for Princeton. I think this is a good bounce back spot. I'm just taking them in the first half here because I think Harvard, obviously Harvard, they're kind of average in terms of how they play offensively and defensively. They don't really play too hard offensively and they don't really play too hard defensively. Meanwhile, you have this Meanwhile, excuse me, you have this Princeton team who can really play well defensively. And, we always talk about how defense goes on the road. And the great example of that was the Wazoo last night. Defense travels. And, I think, in this spot, Princeton, they have one of the better defenses in the Ivy League. And I think, this is a great spot to just take the first half here, -3.5. This is going back to your plays, just get out in the first half. And I like Princeton to get out to an early lead. I think Harvard can maybe sneak and cover that. I think the full game is at -7 or +or -7. So I think Princeton can maybe, just get the first half lead at -3.5, get that 4-point lead and cover the first half spread. Those are my two picks today. Just Cornell on the money line, and then taking Princeton first half -3.5 going to the Ivy League tonight, and pretty much two of the biggest matchups of the night in terms of just the whole slate, because it's not a great slate today, obviously. So not that many picks today. Obviously, tomorrow slate is what we are waiting for. But in terms of what we got tonight, I do like these two picks tonight. Just Cornell on the money line, and then Princeton on the first half -3.5. Ari, I know you got a couple picks lined up tonight. What are you cooking tonight?
Yeah, just one NBA play for me today. Going with the team who I faded yesterday against the Mavericks. Going with the Suns today. Facing the Rockets, who have lost 6 of their last 7 games, obviously dating back to before the All-Star break. It is in Houston, and Houston's been better at home this year. All six of those losses in their last 7 games were on the road, so they've been a little bit better at home. But this is the final stretch of the season where right now the Suns would be in the play-in, and if the season ended today, they need these wins. They're obviously the better team. Obviously you don't always just blindly take the better team, obviously, but the final stretch is like 25 games left in the NBA season, I think. So they need these as much wins as they can get, to avoid the play-in tournament. Suns, I think, the Rockets also got crushed yesterday against the Pelicans. Suns looking to bounce back themselves. I think they get the job done in Houston tonight and, get the win that they should get and a win that they need to avoid the play-in tournament, at this point in the season.
Yeah, you mentioned, especially in the second half of the NBA, well, second half, excuse me, of the NBA season, about how all these teams, kind of in playoff push mode, and some of these lines, being a little bit adjusted because of that. So, but also at the same time, we do get to take advantage of some of these spots. You mentioned the Suns -4. We talk about how Houston is a lot better at home, but they've lost 6 of their last 7 going into the break, and then heading out now. And then you have the Suns team who cannot really, as you mentioned, can't really afford any bad losses. Obviously, they just had a bad loss last night on the road to Dallas, and now, as you mentioned, you just faded them last night. Now in this bounce back spot, going to Houston. You mentioned it. I think we're going to be talking about a lot more about some of these NBA lines as we get closer to the end of the regular season, going now into the final stretch, and as you mentioned, playoff mode. Heading now to the end of the season. But those are our best bets for today. Now we're going to get into tomorrow's slate. We talked about it a little bit earlier, just highlighting a couple games that we liked on the slate for tomorrow. We don't have any lines or anything as of right now. We will have our best bets for tomorrow, obviously, on Twitter. You can find that on our Twitter at AKP Sports Talk. We'll have all of that information for you later. But we just wanted to talk about these two first games. But first, let's talk about the Houston and Baylor game here. I mean, this is going to be one of the better matchups on the slate. We have not that many top 25 matchups tomorrow, unlike, previous week where we had, that Duke UNC and then that Houston Kansas game. Now it's just a couple games. But first, we'll talk about this Houston Baylor game here. My first initial lean when I see this game, I do like the under. We always talk about Houston's defense and how they can go anywhere. Baylor's defense has definitely been the struggle at this point this year. They have relied a lot more on their offensive prowess this year, and that's kind of feel like it's going to be a lot more exposed against a Houston defense that can get in the lane and force turnovers. That's kind of what Kelvin Sampson and that Houston team has kind of been leaning on throughout the season. But they do have some struggles going on the road. We've seen them lose at Iowa State, and Iowa State pretty much being their biggest threat. We saw that close game at Kansas. But Ari, when you see this game right here on Saturday tomorrow between Houston and Baylor, what do you like? Are you seeing anything early, maybe an over, an under, maybe a hypothetical spread? Is there anything you like so far when you look at these two teams?
No, yeah, I mean, obviously there's no spread out as of when we're recording this, so we're just kind of just talking about the game just in general. And, obviously when you look at when you first look at Houston, you always think of the under, obviously, even though their offense has been a little bit better their past couple of games. But Obviously Baylor's defense is generally considered to be better than what they faced the last couple of games. Houston's also had some struggles on the road, as you mentioned. So obviously we'll wait and see what the lines are and everything for this game. But my general lean at first glance is probably a kind of gross under, or not gross under, but just kind of like a sloppy kind of defensive, gritty type of game. But I don't know. I mean, if it's a short spread, we talk about Houston struggles on the road at times this year. Baylor might be able to sneak one out at home. So we'll see where the spread opens up, but. In general, the under is my first kind of lean, between these two teams.
Yeah, this kind of low key almost reminds me of that Creighton UConn game we just saw a couple days ago. This UConn team potentially that we talk about how they are the better team, on both sides of the ball. And then Creighton, obviously, even though they are better defending the three, they were at home. That home crowd is something going to play a factor. So maybe depending on what the spread is looking like, if it's going to be something like it was UConn, UConn was about 2.5, 3 to 3.5 point favorites, throughout that day. And then obviously Creighton just absolutely mollywhopped them in the first and second half. Maybe we could see something like that, but who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. I also do agree. I like a gross under here, defensive game, just gritty. We talk about Houston obviously getting in the lanes, forcing turnovers, and then Baylor. I feel like they're going to just hang on and, try to use their defense to their advantage here against a good Houston team at home. So we'll see what the lines come out to. Obviously, those lines are probably going to come out later today, if not by the end of the afternoon today. And then obviously the second game we wanted to talk about tomorrow, we have another top 25 matchup, Alabama going to Kentucky here. And look, when I see these two teams, my immediate thought is over. Just simply don't even look at the total. Just take the over. This happened to me. Yes, this happened to me with Florida and Alabama. Everyone was saying, don't take that over. It's at 173. The game, the game finished in the 90s for both teams. It's soared over. Now, yes, there was overtime, but we talk about how Swiss cheese both defenses are here. Right? We've seen Kentucky. They just lost the other day. They just lost at LSU. Really embarrassing loss. They couldn't really get anything going offensively, and LSU was just always kind of hanging around and kind of gnaw on their side until they got that last second tip in for the win. And then Alabama, obviously, one of the best teams right now, one of the best stories in the SEC, kind of surging kind of from nothing after having a rocky start to the beginning of the season. But you really look at their schedule, and their schedule was really, really hard. And they had to face so many top 25 teams in that stretch, and whether it was road or home or neutral site, they battled, and now they're in the spot to pretty much cement themselves as the top team in the SEC going to Kentucky. Mine leans the over. Maybe depending on what the spread is looking like, I think Alabama maybe opens up and maybe 3.5 to 4 point favorites on the road, just because there's always Rupp Arena. I feel like you got to give credit to Kentucky where it's due, but I just think I like this over. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game. Obviously, we talk about how Alabama, one of the better offenses, Mark Sears, that Nate Oates offense, one of the best in the country and one of the best in the SEC. And then we talk about Kentucky's offense, especially at home. We saw it. I feel like this is a similar spot like that Gonzaga game. We saw two high-powered offenses battling out in Rupp Arena. I think it's just going to be a really high-scoring game. Ari, I'll quit yapping here. What do you like in this matchup between Alabama and Kentucky? I know this over is probably going to be set up maybe in the 170s, maybe even close to 180s probably, with just how offensively these two teams play. But what do you like if maybe there's a hypothetical spread? Do you lean Alabama, or maybe even take the points with Kentucky at home as potentially a home dog? What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like if Alabama gets up to anywhere near like 5 to 6 point in favor, I think I would take Kentucky to cut with the points at that point. If it's shorter, I think Alabama wins in a close one. It's kind of my initial lean. So I think depending on what the spread is, I may take Alabama if it's like a 1 or 2 point favorite, or Kentucky if Alabama is like a 5 or 6 point favorite, something like that. So my initial lean is Alabama in the close one, just straight up. Like you were saying, it's hard not to lean towards the over initially between these two teams, obviously with how they play. But it feels like if it's over unders up to like mid 170s. Obviously it could hit. It just feels like everything has to go right the entire game for both teams. Like you said, the last game for Alabama against Florida, obviously you take the overtime and you take those points, obviously, but it's like, there were some stretches where they were struggling to score, and if all it takes is really like a 3 minute stretch to struggle scoring for both teams, and then over's in trouble. But then they can make it up for it in the next 2 minutes, obviously. So that's just kind of how it goes. But we'll see where the total is at and where the spread's at. But my initial lean, just straight up in the game, is Alabama in a close, competitive game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like Alabama definitely edges out against Kentucky here. My initial lean as well. You talk about how Kentucky, we've seen them lose at home many times this season, especially against good defense, good offenses. And here comes Alabama, another good offense going into Rupp Arena. And you always talk about. You just mentioned the Florida Alabama game just a few days ago, where I think the total was at 173 or 174, and throughout that first half, it was looking pretty shaky because both teams didn't really start to get their shooting form, and you kind of mentioned everything kind of has to go right to kind of hit that total because when you think about it, you got to think, okay, it's 173, that's like a 90 to 80 something game, and that's really high for college. So they basically have to be hitting everything. So I'm hoping that total is not up in the 170s, 180 range, but especially with how that last game literally just was for Alabama. We've known how Kentucky's offense is at home. It's probably going to be up there. So we may target something else, whether it's maybe first half total. Obviously, both teams kind of struggle in the first half. So maybe we take a first half under, or as maybe as Ari was talking about, just leaning with Alabama. I think Alabama gets the win on the road here. But we're going to have our best bets for both of these games and more, as we get through another weekend of college basketball, and we're getting closer to our favorite time of the month, Ari, Champ Week. Our favorite time. It's right around the corner. We're going to be having some ASUN titles. We're going to be having some Missouri Valley Arc Madness. It's going to be fun.
And what's best of it is like games all day during those times where you have games, from 9 a.m. Pacific time all the way through the day. And obviously that's a preview of what's to come for the first 2 days of March Madness as well.
Exactly. We talked about it a little bit last year, but Monday is going to be officially 1 week away from all championships starting. We have some of the mid major starting on March 4th, so that's just a couple Mondays away. But we're getting closer and closer, obviously. So tune in at all of that. But obviously, all of our bets are going to be there on our Twitter below AKP Sports Talk. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That is Ari. I'm Korea. We'll be back on Monday for another episode of AKP Sports Talk, and obviously previewing some of the March Madness tournaments. I'm so excited. This is my favorite time of year. I always get excited for March because of Champ Week, the tournament, all that fun stuff. But that's going to do it for this episode. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll see you guys on Monday. Peace out.